Welcome to The Incompetent Griller, where I'm going to teach you, an incompetent griller, how to look like you know what you're doing when grilling in front of your family and friends. Today we'll be making pulled pork by smoking a pork shoulder butt on a Weber kettle grill. We'll be cooking hot and fast this morning because my home is under a tornado watch for this evening, and I want to be eating pork by this afternoon while watching for tornadoes from my front porch. Cook time should be between 5 and 6 hours, so let's get started. For this hot and fast cook, we're going to get our coals started in the chimney, then start prepping our pork butt. Start with an 8 to 10 pound bone-in pork shoulder butt. To prepare your pork butt, begin by scoring the fat cap just down to the meat. Grab your chef's knife, or just use the sharpest knife you have. I'm using my Miracle Blade slicer, possibly the greatest knife ever made.
I don't care how long you use it or how much abuse you give it, that knife will stay sharp the first time for a lifetime. Watch, I just cut through wood, that tomato will still cut like a razor.
See, Chef Tony knows. While scoring the fat cap, and with the greatest of apologies to the Marines, please repeat the Miracle Blade creed after me. This is my Miracle Blade. There are many like it, but this one is mine. My Miracle Blade is my best friend. It is my life. I must master it as I must master my life. Without me, my Miracle Blade is useless. Without my Miracle Blade, I am useless. By scoring the fat cap in this diamond pattern, we're opening up our meat to receive more of the seasoning. Also, the fat will render better, and it will help create a fantastic bark when it's on the grill. I know in other videos I've been very direct about using specific seasonings on your meat. However, for this pork shoulder, you get to decide based on whatever sounds good to you. Pigs are magical creatures and are delicious pretty much no matter what you do. You could keep this simple by just covering it in salt and pepper, and it will still taste fantastic. I'm in the mood for something sweet, so I will be using the Sweet Preacher blend from Fire and Smoke Society. Proceed to coat all sides of your pork in the seasoning. You can use a binder such as mustard or oil, but I find there's usually enough moisture in meats to get seasonings sticking pretty well without the extra work. Now to set up the grill. Place the hot coals to one side, then place a drip pan on the other, and fill it about halfway with water. This will help keep the cooking environment humid, while protecting the pork from any direct heat, which will only burn the meat. This indirect method of smoking will result in some delicious pulled pork in half the time of low and slow. Naturally, there will be some of you who are appalled that I'm smoking a pork butt hot and fast, because pretty much all you hear about on YouTube is the low and slow method. However, I have found that hot coals, open vents, can't lose. Say it with me. Hot coals, open vents, can't lose. Can't lose! To be clear, low and slow will produce the best pulled pork. It's the equivalent of an A+ in school. However, pork butts are very forgiving, so the hot and fast method will still get you an A in the class, and in half the time, which is pretty darn good. This goes to support my argument that barbecue is about the pursuit of incremental increases in deliciousness at the expense of exponential increases in time and effort. Whichever way you choose to cook your pork butt, it's going to be amazing. So amazing, in fact, that your neighbors may just forgive you for that thing you did. They told me all about it, and frankly, you should be embarrassed. Fortunately, this pulled pork recipe is going to go a long way toward making amends. Once you have everything set up and the lid on, with the vents over the meat to draw your smoke that way, you're then going to remember that you completely forgot to put the applewood chunks on the coals to get that smoky flavor. Rectify that, then you're on the road to success. We're going to check on the pork every hour, but until that time, just leave the lid on. This lesson was taught to us by Adam and Eve, who I can only assume were kicked out of the Garden of Eden for not heeding that all-important truth. If you're looking, you're not cooking. When you go to check your pork each hour, you're going to turn it so you get an even cook. Then, you're going to spray it with a liquid. I'm using apple juice to match the applewood smoke, but I've seen people use water, vinegar, or even Dr. Pepper. What I'm saying is, you've got options. Once you're done with the spritzing, you can put the lid back on and do something else for another hour. Now you may be wondering what to do with each hour you have until you need to come back to the grill. To be honest, it could be anything. You could save yourself some money by winding your own string trimmer spools by hand. You could play with your kids in the yard. You could even take time to read that one ebook from that unheralded amateur author you've been meaning to get to. The fact is, smoking pulled pork is pretty easy, and you're going to have a lot of time on your hands. I know you've heard people talk about how they had to babysit their smokers for 10 or even 12 hours, but the fact is, even though it sounds impressive, the level of babysitting required is the equivalent of peeking into the playroom every hour just to make sure the kids haven't killed each other. All you're doing is taking a temperature, turning the meat, and spritzing it. If you want to talk it up like some kind of war story, that's up to you. Once you hit an internal temperature of around 160 degrees Fahrenheit in your pork, which should be after about 3 or 4 hours, take it off the grill and place the meat in a tin pan.
Oh.
That's good pork.
While this looks amazing, it isn't ready to eat just yet, so calm yourself down. Pour some Sweet Baby Ray's hickory and brown sugar barbecue sauce all over the meat. You can choose a different flavor if you want to, just make sure it's still Sweet Baby Ray's. That stuff is amazing. Once that sauce is poured on, cover the pan with tin foil and put it back on the grill. Now we're going to keep monitoring this until the meat reaches between 200 degrees and 210 degrees Fahrenheit. You can tell the pork butt is done when your thermometer slides into the meat like it's butter. This process will likely take another 2 hours, so your main job here is just to make sure the grill temperature is remaining hot. If you see the need, go ahead and add more coals to keep your kettle running hot. Once you've reached that point, take the pan inside and let the meat rest for at least 30 minutes, preferably an hour, so it can reabsorb its juices. Another way to see if your meat is truly done is to check the thermometer Nature pre-installed in your pork shoulder, the bone. If you can pull the bone out with little to nothing stuck to it, then you are a success, both in cooking and in life. Move the meat to another pan, then go ahead and break it up with your hands. Or, because this is still really hot, maybe a pair of forks. You can even level up the deliciousness by spooning some of the leftover juices back onto the meat. That stuff is liquid gold, so you would be wise to save any extra in a mason jar in the fridge for later. Now we're ready to eat, so I'm going to stop this video. Let me know of your own successes down in the comments after trying this method yourselves. Have a great day.